Hey folks, it's your main man Sabado back again. Today is the long-awaited end or third part of my three-part series that really talks about helping you put together your retirement plan, because with a plan, you end up in a bad space. And so the first part of the plan dealt with purpose and why purpose outweighs money. And I talk about the SAID framework, which talks about significance, appreciation, investments, and dependability. Then we moved on and talked a little bit about the sense of purpose, because it's easy for us to imagine a life without going into the office all day. But some of us don't spend time thinking about what we would actually do with that time if we didn't go to the office. And so we talked about what I consider the four pillars of purpose, or the portfolio of purpose, which are contribution and vocation, connection and connectivity, vitality and health, and growth and curiosity. And without any of those, it's going to be difficult to find a path. And looking at the plan in terms of just a path, and looking at the different paths that you can take, because a lot of times when we think about what we should do or what we want to do, we don't think about it in terms of what can also happen, or what does the other side of that argument mean? Or as they say, what happens if you're wrong? So we talk about looking at it from three different perspectives, which the first is the default path. What happens if you keep your current trajectory? So if you continue doing what you're doing now, what's going to happen? And in some cases, that might be just fine. But for a lot of us, I suspect it's probably not. The next one is the pivot path. And what would you do if you lost your job tomorrow, which when you're in Gen X and you're in your 50s, you can see it in the comments. A lot of people find themselves in a situation where they think they're going to work until 60, 65. Then they get laid off and have to figure something else. So what's your path look like then? And then the last one is the blue sky path. And that path is what if money were no object? And a lot of times you start thinking about, in this regard, what would happen if I won the lottery? If I won $1 billion, what would I do with my time? And that's gonna help you ferret out what it is that you would really want to do with your time. And then you start to build your life around the way that you want to spend your time. So I think that gives us a great framework. But I want to talk today about the strategies for timing that transition, because you can have the best plan in the world, but you have to execute it at the right time. But before I go into that path, I just want to talk to you about the folks that are on the channel that aren't subscribed. I have a whole host of people. I get about 22,000 views a month at a minimum. And I realize that with 22,000 views a month, with at least 2 videos a week, that means there's a whole host of you out there that are watching the video and that aren't subscribed. And what brought that to my attention was I had a long-term subscriber who told me, or I'm sorry, a long-term viewer who then became a subscriber and told me, I've been watching your videos since day one and I didn't realize that I wasn't subscribed. And in fact, I went back through my old videos yesterday, or a couple days ago, I'm sorry, and I realized that my first video, and that video was rough. The production value is tough. But it was my first video, keeping it one hundo. And somebody said, I thought I was with you from day one and realized I hadn't watched this video. And just to be honest, I actually just reposted that video. It was so bad in my eyes that I unlisted it for a while. Then I said, at some point, people need to see where it starts, because if there's any of you out there that are thinking about starting a YouTube channel that are afraid, once you see that first YouTube channel and you see how far I've become with very little effort and very little foresight, you'll realize that anybody can start a YouTube channel and be just as good as anybody else. And if you think my YouTube stuff is the bomb, wait until you do yours. You'll be the bomb.com. So subscribe to the channel. That's the one way that, for those of you that have been in chats with Sabado that say, what can I do to help the channel? Just subscribe to the channel. Part of my goal is to make sure that I don't get into the mode where I'm trying to sell you anything. And that's not for lack of trying, because I'm going to tell you right now, I get emails all the time for sponsorships, collaborations, and people that want to do stuff and pay me for things on the channel. And I just don't want to do that, because I don't want to be beholden to anybody else, because what's important to me is just being authentic. And if somebody else is crafting my message, then I'm not keeping it real. And if I'm not keeping it real with myself, then that means I'm not keeping it real with you, because that's what I've been talking about for the last couple of years as I've done this channel. So on that note, I just want to say, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to continue to give you good content. If there's stuff you want to see on the channel, let me know. I'll create content around that, because if it's my audience that's telling me what they want to hear and what's going to help them, that's one thing. If it's some sponsor that's going to give me $1,000 for advertising rollerblades, I'm not going to do it, because it's not worth it to me. I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing this to uplift the human condition, and we're all part of the human condition, and we're here in this thing working together. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Anyhow, I want to talk about timing your transition, because timing isn't all about money. We tend to think about timing um, as being about the money, and we got to have $1 million or whatever the case is. And I hope that we've gotten to the point where we've debunked the myth that everybody needs the same amount of money to retire. Some people need more, but as we saw in previous videos, most people have significantly less. And most retired people are doing just fine. I mean, we all have the case where we know somebody who might be struggling, but that's more the exception than the rule. But what we really have to figure out, and what we have to cross, are the healthcare bridge and the retirement cliff. And you want to be able to phase your retirement and not necessarily just look at a hard stop, because everything we've talked about up to this point is just difficult when you have a hard stop. It's almost like you're going in a car at 100 miles an hour, you hit the brakes, and what slams you forward isn't the fact that you stopped the car, it's the momentum taking you forward. And believe it or not, you build momentum as you're going down the path of working, getting your checks, and doing the things you do on your daily life. But having a slope as opposed to a cliff has its benefits. It gives you the opportunity to test drive your purpose and test drive activities before you actually do them. Many of you realize or know that I started playing the piano once I retired, and I realized that that probably wasn't going to be the path of my long-term goal. In fact, over the holidays, somebody asked me about if I'm still playing the piano, and I learned what I learned, but I'm not doing it as feverishly as I am this YouTube channel, because I find more satisfaction in speaking to all of you than sitting by myself in my studio. My piano's right here, typing away on the piano. Different people have different interests, and that's okay. But it allows you to test drive your identity, gives you an opportunity to test drive your activities and that kind of thing, and helps you with what I call the Prego years. And that's the 5 years before you retire, that you're in Prego mode, trying to figure out what do things look like. And it could be 5 years, it could be 3 years, it could be 2 years, it could be whatever it is. Many of you know that I didn't necessarily know I was going to retire when I retired until about 8-12 months before I retired, because my financial advisor and I got into a conversation about how that was possible. Knowing what I wanted to do with my life, knowing that it was possible, I was like, man, that's all you got to tell me. So we started having the conversations, and I had 8, 10, 12 conversations leading up to retirement, because it's not an easy decision. It's easy for me to talk about it now because I've been retired almost 3 years. But it's, at the time, it was an incredibly difficult challenge, which is why it's so easy for me to talk to you about it. Because look, I hear the scrutiny and I hear the conversations that we have in the comments and on some of the live episodes, but it wasn't easy. And I don't think anything in this world that's worth anything is ever easy. And if something is ever too easy, then it's a problem. You think about people that try to sell you snake oil that's going to change your world. And the question I always have is, if it's that easy, then how come I'm not hearing this from a bunch of people? And the reality is because it's not easy. There's always a cost, or as they used to tell me when I was a kid, ain't nothing free. But you have to, the big thing you want to prepare for is getting your mindset away from accumulation to utilization. Not trying to save a bunch of money and build your nest egg, but utilizing your nest egg. And I'll tell you, for those of you on this channel, it's going to be hard to get into that mindset, because the reason that you're here is because you were probably researching retirement channels, trying to figure out how to do things, because you're goal oriented just like I am. And part of your goals are making money. Part of your goals are saving. Part of your goals are retirement. And once you get to that, the question becomes, what is it that I'm going to do? So when you phase it in, it gives you an opportunity to address those in short spurts over time. And it gives you the opportunity to determine if you do need to make a couple dollars in retirement. Because look, I would rather drive Uber for a couple hours and make a couple $100 just to soften the edges than have to go back into an office and deal with all the BS every day by the water cooler. And there's a lot of opportunities to do that, particularly now with the gig economy and all of that. But what helps you do that are those Prego years, or as you retire, looking at it as a slope as opposed to a cliff. And the other piece of that you have to take a look at is you have to look at the healthcare bridge. And if you retire at 51 or you retire at 55, or if you retire before you're 65, you have to find a way to fund your healthcare. And that it could be an expensive proposition. Now, if you take the amount of dollars and your anticipated rate of return, you may be able to just take money that's in your retirement funds, put that away, and then offset that later with Social Security. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. Everybody should talk to a financial advisor because your circumstances are different. But what you want to contemplate, if nothing else, is just contemplate the cost of your healthcare and how you're going to cover healthcare. There's another YouTuber. His name is Joe Kuhn, and his channel is Joe Kuhn, Kuhn. It's Joe Kuhn Loves Retirement. And one of the things he talked about an organization that he became aware of where it's geared towards early retirees and having them be on a group plan. So I don't know what the name of the organization is, but go to his channel, ask him. And I'll tell you, Joe's one of the people that I spoke to early on in my YouTube journey. And he's one of the people that gave me the confidence to move forward, because this guy has a 60, 70,000 per subscriber mega channel. And I was just some guy with whatever that retired at 51. And he was like, yo, go tell your story. I tell you all that, not because I want to pump up Joe, but I just want to tell you, I want to keep it real, because there are people out there that are like me that are willing to just lace you up with some information. And he's one of those people. And he's easy to deal with. You can send him an email and he gets right back to you. I mean, the guy's just a cool cat out in Indiana somewhere, but he talked about this organization he came into connection with that was talking to him about his healthcare. But I think he's on the Indiana Farm Bureau because he's in Indiana. But again, you're going to want to make sure that you look at it. Or if you go to the ACA enhanced subsidies are gone, but the ACA is still less expensive in a lot of cases than a group plan. So there's a lot of opportunities out there to look at it. But don't allow yourself to get into that one more year scenario. You know, the math around that one more year scenario, it just doesn't add up. And it really serves as nothing but a psychological trap that keeps you working, because you think a year is going to make a big difference. But if you've been doing everything up to this point to get prepared, one more year isn't really going to do a whole lot, because you have to look at it and the stages of, or in terms of looking at your overall nest egg. And you say, okay, let's say you save $800,000 and you make $60,000 a year. Is $860,000 going to be different than $800,000 in the big scheme of things, that with a 4 to 6% return over the next 30 years? No, because if you took that and if you turn it around, and again, my math is going to be real rough, but if you turn that around and you said, I retired at 50 for a 30-year retirement, and you said $60,000 and you had to make payments on that, your payments would be low. Why? Because the impact of that is very, very small. So it's the same type of thing, but I would just try to figure out a way to run different scenarios based on your costs and based on your circumstances to understand, does that work for you? And what happens when you calculate the healthcare into it? Because if the healthcare becomes one of your fixed costs until you're the age of 65, so if you're 55, it's 10 years. If you're 51, it's 9 years. And you say $1,000 a month for 9 years, I don't know, 9 years at 12, 108. So that's $108,000. So is there a way for you to take $108,000 out of your retirement account and use that for your healthcare? Or is there a way for you to save enough over the next couple of years as you're going down the Prego years and say, I want to save $60,000, so that way that you can continue to make money on the other side of that with your interest? But again, I don't know that those are all viable, but those are things that you want to take a look at, because what you'll find is you'll find that your investment returns, once you get to a certain stage, and if you're on this channel, then I'm going to tell you that you're probably at that stage, but you're going to get to a certain stage where your retirement income is going to do more work than any other income that you have. And that's where you want to be. And that's what you want to have work for you, not just for you going to Antigua and sitting on the beach, but also for your retirement stuff. So don't take that for granted. Take into account the fact that your returns are going to make money. Take into account that on average, your returns are going to be about, they've been for the last 100 years, about 10% a year. And take into account that you're going to make 4%, 6%, 8% on your, and you're also going to get dividends on some mutual funds and so on. So there's going to be opportunities. And once you get there, you're going to realize how much more opportunity there is than what you thought, because right now we're just used to putting money into the bank. But I'm just going to tell you, and I call this the everyman shift, is if you're on this channel, you're probably a high achiever. And if you're a high achiever, you're going to have what I call status shock, because you're going to go from being some super important mofo in the corporate world. And I know some of us say we don't like put our identities there, but we all do to some degree. And you're going to go from the position of authority, whether you're a director, high level individual contributor, whatever you are, to being just the everyday person. So you want to, at least 2 years in advance, try to figure out what it is or who you're going to be. So for me, I know that I'm a master gardener. I know that I was going to uplift the human condition in any way that I can, and everything I do does that. And so I was able to slide right in. A lot of people can't do that because they haven't taken the time. So do that before, at least try to do it at least 2 years before you give notice, so you end up in the right space. So, folks, this is the end of the 3-part series that I had. And I hope that, again, it's helpful for you to put some context around it. I'm going to try to take all 3 of these episodes, put them into a playlist so you can go back and refer to them, because there's a lot of meaty information in these last 3 episodes. And I did do one out of cycle episode, and I know that kind of screwed up the 3-part series, but sometimes you got to give you some information based on what's going on in my head. But at the end of the day, most of us that are thinking about it can find a pathway to get there. And it may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow. But remember, the reason that you're watching me isn't because you're looking for somebody to entertain you. It's because you're looking for somebody who's serious, that's actually done it, that's figured out how to win that game. And I've done it, folks. And I've just tried to share with you the things that help me. And everything may not help everybody all the time, and I'm okay with that. And some people may disagree. And the beauty of the disagreements is that creates dialogue in the comments. So make sure that not only do you subscribe to the channel, but put your thoughts down in the comments, because even if I don't write a written response to the comment, others are looking at those comments, and you have an impact on a bunch of other people. Because again, 22,000 people watch my videos every single month. And that's 22,000 people. And think about how many of you found the channel because somebody told you about it. And so they're telling their friends and their family members and so on. And all I want to do is make sure I continue to have an impact to uplift the human condition any way that I can. That's why I say it's so important to subscribe, but also comment, so then I know what you're thinking. And if I need to pivot on an idea, I'll pivot on an idea. My ego's not tied into it. I just want to give good GAME. But take all of that knowing that it's never my expectation that everybody retire early, but it is my expectation that you can live your best life. So on that high note, I'm going to go ahead and cut it off, but I just want to say, have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.